Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Town Council meeting of January 4th, 2024. Happy New Year to everybody. I need to make this announcement before we get going. In accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20, I must inquire whether anyone is recording this meeting, and if so, please make your presence known. I see no presence known, so we'll begin with roll call, please.
Councilors: Bloom,
Here.
Burdick,
Present.
Clark,
Here.
Crow,
Here.
Levesque, Ludke,
Here.
Mendes,
Here.
Neary,
Here.
Penn,
Here.
Schnepp,
Here.
Starr,
Here.
Tamish,
Here.
Turkelson.
Here.
You have 13.
Thank you. And we'll begin, and please join me as you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll remain standing for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Okay, so we come to our favorite time of the evening, and that's public comment. If you'd like to speak, please come up to the dais, make sure the microphone is on, the big green light, and please sign in. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Tom Cambereri. I live in Centerville, in Precinct 4. And this evening I sent off a page letter to the town council, and I just will try to read it within my public comment piece of this. And so there's been considerable discussion recently about with wind farm cable crossings in the town of Barnstable public beaches on Nantucket Sound. This week, in fact, Vineyard wind cables are being energized as the first electrons from the wind farm come ashore at Covell's Beach. I understand that the town is committed to and/or is requiring the proponent, Avangrid, to monitor electromagnetic waves for the two new wind farm projects. It's not clear to me if the town's recent requirement or commitment for monitoring for Avangrid or its successor includes the now operational cables at Covell's Beach. So Covell's Beach is a resident-only beach where families and visitors rest and enjoy the beauty of Nantucket Sound, swim in the salt water, and create memories that will last a lifetime. I know my family's been frequenting the beach for decades, and we're now on our fourth generation of enjoying the beach there. During the permitting of the Vineyard Wind Project, I reviewed the EIS, EIR, and found the document kind of lacking when it came to addressing electromagnetic waves at the beach area. The EIS and EIR showed modeling of these electromagnetic waves from cables beneath roadways and beneath the seafloor, and the models, showed some indicated some peaks of electromagnetic waves above the cables, and went on in some detail to address the potential impacts on seafloor fauna and that kind of thing. But the EIS, EIR did not address the potential impacts of daily beachgoers or even try to compare observed measurements of electromagnetic waves from actual cable installations elsewhere in the world. So my comments to Vineyard Wind during the permitting process suggested public notice of the location of the crossings, monitoring of the electromagnetic waves, and a public information kiosk at the beach. None of those were incorporated. So I took pictures of that installation this last winter, starting in December 2022. And I have also purchased a little electromagnetic wave monitor, and so I've been taking background measurements. I figured nobody else was doing it. Maybe I'll try. See what happens. So given the public discussion around the proposed wind farm cable crossings at Craigville and Dowses Beach, I think it's time for the town to take immediate measures to inform and verify the public and health and safety of its residents at Covell's Beach. And I thought this should include, let's start with a verification. Where are those cables and how deep are they? It's called an as-built plan. A public notice location of the cables at the beach. Where are they at the beach? That would be good to know, I think. I mean, we take measurements of water at these minute, parts per trillion as a potential risk to public health. Well, maybe this reaches that as well. Immediate monitoring of electromagnetic waves from the cables, I would say on a daily basis during the summer. It would be nice to post those on daily results and compare the results to public health guidelines. And hey, any kind of monitoring program has some contingencies. Well, having great, what if the readings are in excess of the expected measurements? What kind of contingencies could potentially be done? Be interesting. And then I would like to see an installation of a public information Vineyard Wind kiosk at the beach as well. Let's in the paper today there was great rejoice and bragging and boasting about how great the project was and all that. Well, let's put it down there where the people are literally putting their lives or putting it on the line on the beach. So I've included some graphics.
Tom, if you could wrap it up, please.
Yes, I've included some graphics of where those cables are crossing, a schematic from the EIS-EIR of the depths of the cables, some of the modeling from the seafloor of the electromagnetic waves, and the last one is a potential wording of a public notice. 800 megawatt cable crossing, 2 cables crossing Covell's Beach from Vineyard Wind, located 13 miles from the south of. The cables are approximately 10 to 8 inches in diameter. I wasn't sure exactly. The cable depth is approximately 10 feet below the ground. The cable descends from here to approximately 30 feet below the beach, as in the design plan. That really hasn't been verified. Electromagnetic waves are being monitored on a daily basis through the summer by the town of Barnstable. The results, as well as public health exposure guidelines, are posted on the town website. Initial results will be posted here soon by July 4th, 2024, we would hope. And please contact, I said the town manager because I don't know who else to put, if you have any questions. So anyway, those were my thoughts going into this, and with the discussion that's been going on at Craigville and Dowses Beach. It's like, hey, we're here. It's already at Covell's Beach. And we're the town residents that go there. And it would be good for the town to inform us about, what those potential risks are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for putting the packet together. Very informative.
Roberta Mock, 80 Greenwood Avenue, Hyannis. I'm going to be brief. My particular area of concern, just after what Tom had said, is the Centerville River itself. That seems to be left out of the conversation quite a bit. I'm wondering, I cross that bridge every day to go to work, and in the summertime I see the kids jumping off the bridge. It's been going on for years, even though this is not to do it, but the kids all jump off that bridge every summer. Quintessential Cape Cod experience. What are we going to do about that bridge? I think it was built in 2002. How are we going to keep our teenagers and young people safe? How deep? I'd like to know exactly where is that electromagnetic field that sharks bite the cable. It irritates them so much. I want to know where exactly that's going under our river, and is it putting our children at harm? Basically, how are we going to address this? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Please come forward. Microphone is yours. Can't hear you.
I have public comment, but I wanted to wait for everyone who has the wind thing to talk first. Nobody else wants to talk.
We don't have any special order, Cheryl, just come and speak. We're not alphabetized by subject matter, it's okay.
Okay, that's good. Oh, good evening. I think all of you, almost all of you know me. I'm looking forward to meeting you. I am going to pass out some information. I would appreciate it. I know that my address is on one of them if that does not be read out. Cheryl Powell, and I'm not speaking tonight about any of the commissions on which I serve or the ones that I chair. This is I'm here as a member of the public to speak on a concern that I have. This is the copy, and I'm going to pass that around. Okay, so it's tax time. Last January, 2023, I received a property tax bill. Let me know if you can't hear me. Felicia, I will speak up.
Thank you.
A property tax bill. And I was floored by it because, oh my gosh, it's over 50% increase in what's going on. So I called and I was told I could file an abatement, but I would still have to pay the higher amount on February 1st, which I did. I had to call to find out how much is actually supposed to be paid. I had to also have them remove the fact that the prime residence, and everybody knows this is my prime residence, had been removed, and the fire pit I didn't have, despite the fact that most of my neighbors around me have a fire pit and I do not. Anyway, so I was told I won the abatement. I was told I had to give 3 examples. I gave 18 as proof. I won the abatement, and I was told it would be corrected by May. I mean, I'm shorter, so I'll go down. I got the bill. It was still at the higher amount by the previous calculation. I had to call in. I won the abatement. Yes, you did. That's incorrect on the amount you have to pay. We'll give you the amount you have to pay. We'll tell you over the phone. I didn't want it over the phone, so I went in, and that time it was written on a Post-it note. I'm trying to keep my bills straight. Anyway, so I was told it would be corrected by August. In August, I was told, it was explained to me that our tax bills for 3 areas, not all of the villages, just 3 of them, Hyannisport, Centerville, and there's one other. I think it was Osterville, but I wouldn't swear to that. I am in Centerville, as you can see from the documents I've given to you. It had been contracted out, and they had made an error. That was the first time I heard of it just referred to as an error. It was an error. It would be corrected by November. November, I got a bill for the highest amount, and I'm calling and I'm saying, look, I'm really concerned that when we get to next year, the calculations are going to be done on the higher amount errors from January, May, and August. What is happening? Can we please correct it? Because I have a right as a citizen, as a resident, as a taxpayer and a voter to have accurate bills. You expect me to pay them, I'm happy to, well, not happy to pay them, but I pay them because everybody has to, right? But I have a right to have an accurate bill. Not on a Post-it note, not on the next one I received, which they did the little adding machine and gave me this little thing about that high and that wide from the adding machine to pay my bill. So I was told it would be done by November. November it was higher. I got my bill today. And you can see the bill that I received. It's based on the previous amount from last January, which was never corrected. And I'm told it'll probably be corrected by May, again. So anyway, I got through all that. I practically had a heart attack when I got that. Calculated on the previous,
It's
they added
3 minutes,
interest.
If you could wrap up, please.
If I can have 1 more minute, please.
Sure.
So they also added interest for not having paid the higher amount. They did say they were going to wipe off the interest. So I went in today, spoke with Sean, a very nice young man, and he tried very hard to help. After being told by the assessor's office, it's not us, go to the tax collector. Tax collector said, you really need to go to the assessors. But then Sean did try to help. He said that he and the woman who was behind the desk, also very nice, said, oh, your property is part of the error. It now has a title. Anyway, you can see my abatement. It goes from 2%. Some people only had an increase of, I think it was $17 for the year. One is $168 for the year. This is from the abatement from the previous years. One went up 76%, mine was 50.4%. Those are the examples on there, 13%. And these are all from properties that are like mine. So my concern is what I'm asking the town. I was told that this is not the task of the town council, but the town council is tasked with protecting the residents and the residents' interests. So I am very respectfully, and I think you all know me, I respect the town, I honor the town, I feel quite honored to serve, and the ones that I do, I don't have to convince anyone of that. But I am asking to please have accountability, to give accurate bills, to get the error corrected. I'm not the only one. This is Cape Cod. I'm finalizing now. This is Cape Cod. This is, to a large extent, a residential area. Not always. I mean, it's changing, but there are a lot of pensioners on the Cape. What about these people that pay out of good faith that the government got it right? They pay these high amounts and it's wrong in these areas. And then it's going to keep being calculated on those higher amounts. So I do feel that we as taxpayers and residents have a right to have accurate bills, and I would respectfully request that this get corrected. The final thing is, I paid in November $2,506.62 for that quarter. I was then asked to pay $5,929.43. That's a heck of an increase. Respectfully, can we get the error corrected and addressed? Many thanks for your time, and many thanks for the extra couple of minutes. And have a good evening.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? No? So we'll go to council response to public comment. Lynn? Is somebody online?
I just want to say there is no one online.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for getting my attention. Council response to public comment on the right. Ms. Ludke.
Thank you, President Penn. First of all, Tom Cambereri, you're kind of like E.F. Hutton. When you talk, people should listen. If they're not listening, they ought to. Thank you. I think that's a fantastic recommendation that ought to be enacted in any way we can, if it's not already in the host agreement. You're right. There's been a lot of celebratory from the governor on down about this, the first bit of power coming through. But again, we are the ones bearing the brunt of it. And if we're not going to do the monitoring that you recommend, I think we'd be really remiss in our duties as a municipality. So thank you, Mr. Cambereri. Absolutely wonderful comments, and I hope we can take those up. Roberta, yours were in the same line. I think, you're talking about the next project. A subsequent one would be the same kind of monitoring under that river. My kids have jumped off that river. I know what you're talking about. We have to, continue the monitoring that's recommended. And Cheryl, this hits very close to home for me. As you said, one of the areas was Hyannisport. That's in my precinct. I had a constituent call me. He had the same thing. He went through the abatement process last year. He won the abatement. He got his bill. He was being charged interest. I mean, it's the same story as yours. I had other people, and this crosses from our residents to our summer residents. We all know we're a strong summer community, and I want to say probably Hyannisport and maybe Osterville pay so many taxes towards this town. And we just did the split of the taxes and gave a little more burden to our summer residents. And this has to be corrected. This error, it's unacceptable. I agree with Cheryl. It's absolutely maddening that we can't get these taxes right. I mean, that's where our money comes from. It's on the backs of these folks. And it's my folks, and I know several of them had to hire a lawyer last year to argue their case before the Board of Assessors. And we shouldn't be having to do this. These bills should be accurate. So I don't know, Town Manager Markels, if you can address this. This has to be fixed, and Cheryl gave an example of a letter. What I'm concerned about is the people, as Cheryl referenced, who trust that we got it right and they pay their bill without doing the abatement. Are we notifying everybody who has this error? Everybody should be notified, regardless of whether they took the time and effort and even hired a legal representation to file abatements. we need to fix this. It needs to be fixed now, and every single person who's in this error needs to be notified immediately so that they're not paying their bills, and, something has to be worked out. So thank you so much, Cheryl. Really a huge problem that hits very close to home, because I had so many of my constituents called me last year, and they're already starting to call again. Thank you.
Anybody else on the right? No. Anybody on the left? Matt?
Thank you, President Penn. I just wanted to thank Ms. Powell for coming up. It definitely hits close to home, as what was already said, because I also won the golden ticket. And it happened to myself, and I just got my tax bill, and so I agree with you. It's very shocking for somebody that kind of understands, the workings and understands that, yes, mistakes happen, but really going above and beyond to try to make it right and letting people know. And, you hear these rumors about errors in neighborhood codes and things of that nature that are happening, and there's really no way. It's something that needs to be addressed. It's something that I worked on, and I'll continue to work on moving forward. Something, unfortunately, that I was aware of, and that again, it's a mistake and it needs to be corrected. So, and I will definitely be following up on that, not only for my own, but also for everybody in the town. Again, here we are. Understand evaluations go up, taxes go up, tax burdens get shifted. However, even more than that, we have to make sure that there's no errors. That exasperates people and puts more stress. Inflation, gas, everything costs more money. We need to take care of our constituents and make sure that they understand that they're being treated fairly. So I appreciate that, and I tell you, I will follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering to do that. Any other comments? Yes, Kristen.
I want to also thank Cheryl for coming up. I had a personal tax issue related to the assessment on a new build that was an error due to the town's processes, and actually was part of the reason why I ran. So I hear you, because I'm one of those people who trusted that the information would be correct, and in hindsight it wasn't, and it was an expensive mistake on the town's end. So I appreciate you bringing that forward, and I recognize what the problem was, and now that I'm here, I'm going to make sure that that doesn't carry on, because I don't think that should happen to anybody on something when you're trusting that the town is doing their job and things are moving along. And this is just an example again of how that might not be working so well. So I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Council Crowe.
I won't beat a dead horse on the same subject, but I think a notice, as Councilor Ludke explained, would be good for all the people who are involved in this with their properties. I think that can be done by the town, and so people are aware there is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Levesque.
Just to follow up, I think a notice was given out. I don't know if Mark Milne wants to address it, but I think that's important. I think people who were affected were notified.
Finance Director.
Thank you. Director of Finance, Mark Milne, Town of Barnstable. Yes, a notice was sent out to every taxpayer that was impacted. It was a small number of taxpayers. And I just want to point out that the abatement process is in place for this reason. We're not perfect. We have over 28,000 parcels that have to be valued every year. That's why you have an abatement process. We make mistakes sometimes on evaluations, and you have an abatement process available to you to challenge that valuation. A fraction of less than 1% of our valuations get challenged. That's a pretty good accuracy rate. But we do get things wrong sometimes, and so we have that process. Now, I'm not intimately familiar with Ms. Powell's situation, but I'll talk to our Director of Assessing about her valuation and our Treasurer Collector about the tax bills. But he did take that proactive step of sending out notices to everybody that was impacted by a software error that we had. It's a new version of the program that we implemented. First time we used it for billing for fiscal year '24, and they had a problem with the software. And we caught it after the bills went out, and he took the proactive step of sending a letter out to everybody.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions while he's here? Councilor Lucky?
I just had a question for Director Milne. Did the letter go out to everyone regardless of your
Just those
filing an
impacted.
abatement? It was everybody who was impacted, not just
Everybody
those that filed
impacted.
abatements last year?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
that makes me feel much better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no other response to public comment, we'll go into town manager communications. And that was pre-recorded, as we all know. And number one, he talked about proceeding with the budget action calendar for fiscal year 2025. Number two was a summary about the Board of Health and about the policy about internal mechanisms for providing homeowners an extension of 6 months, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that there were questions from the town council before this about whether or not there's any teeth in that, so we'd probably like a response from that. Of major interest to everybody was the proposed dog control regulations, that evidently they've reverted back to the May 15th through September 15th dog ban on designated bathing beaches. Everybody's happy about that, but there's more information about dog regulations in that report. And on Friday, 12/29, the town manager sent an email to Patrick Johnson, who's manager of external affairs offshore wind for Avangrid, attempted to clarify an email communication that he had sent relative to an upcoming ground penetrating radar survey that Avangrid planned to conduct in early January in Barnstable. And this was in response to lots of inquiries that the town had received about this procedure. Number five was Jim Kupfer, Assistant Director of Planning and Development, is going to provide an update on local comprehensive plan. And number six, our esteemed, recently retired senior counsel for the legal department, Charles McLaughlin, was going to provide a response to questions asked by town councilors regarding town's decision to file or not file for intervenor status in Park City Wind before the Energy Facilities Siting Board. Does everybody have any questions for the town manager? Council Schnapp.
Thank you, Madam President. Mark, I don't see planning staff here tonight, but I did have a question regarding something that was referred to in the LCPC, which was the housing production plan. And I don't know if you have any updates on where we are with the status of that and how we are planning to proceed.
Can I have staff provide that in my next town manager communication, and then prior to it, I'll get something to all council,
That's fine.
based on your question?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have, just to follow up on President Penn's overview, we do have Dan Santos, Brian Florence, I think Tom McKeon and Tom Lee here, relevant to the sewer connection policy. So if you'd like to have them up during this portion and to ask more questions.
Yes, I think that would be terrific.
They're here
I was going to wait to
specifically.
get through the general
Okay, I'm
stuff
sorry.
and then
Thank you.
bring them up, but no other questions for the town manager at this time? Council Crowe.
Thank you, President Penn. I don't have any questions for you, Mark. I just want to reiterate that a lot of the questions I asked in the last 2 or 3 weeks have been answered, and Mark has posted those answers from Charlie McLaughlin with the town manager's report on the other day, I guess. So appreciate you doing that. If the people out there would like to read those, they can go to the town website and find them easily, I think, under, where would they find them, Mark?
Right on our website under town manager communication.
Easy enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, we're all set with this stage of that. Okay, so the Board of of Health sewer connection policy. We have several persons here to help lead us through this and respond to some questions that have been raised recently. Mr. Lee, are you going to start us off? Maybe.
I'm here, so might as well start.
You might as well.
Good evening, Council President Pent and all town councilors. My name is Tom Lee. My second head is the Vice Chair from the Board of Health. I'm kind of helping Tom McKeon to kind of draft the policy. Our Chair, John Norman, is kind of sick, so he did not have a chance to come up here to kind of explain that to you. When it comes into the penalty phrase, this is one of the toolbox that we can use. Under the Mass General Law, there's a $200 fine that we can leave it to the homeowner. But we want to hold back until we understand what the situation is. Because by writing a regulation or policy, I understand from the Concom standpoint, because there are so many variables and scenarios, we cannot just write one policy to cover every single one of them. And we have to listen to the town residents of what is their reasoning and so forth. So one of the things that when you read that policy, you have to read that from the water resource from the town of Barnstable, DBW, on that webpage. There is also a financing options. The county has a loan that is 0% if you can qualify it. I think your income is less than $100,000. If it's 150, it is like 2%. They can go up to 4%. And then the state also offers some credits for your tax. So that's the best options for the residents to deal with the sewer connection fee. And each property is different because depending on the locations of the sewer versus the public sewer is the distance, how that would impact your cost of installing the sewer connections. So that's my first questions, and then if there's some other questions, I can try to answer it.
You did a good job summarizing so far. So if I understand you correctly, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has set the fine at $200 for lack of connection. But obviously, you don't want to just slap that there till you understand what the situation is for every homeowner.
Correct.
Great. And so how will that be determined? Is that a supervisor going on site and speaking? Is that through engineering plans? I mean, how?
This is my understanding of the process. DBW will notify the Board of Health saying that a certain section of the sewer is available for connections. Then the Board of Health will issue the letter to those residents that they should start looking into making the connections. But the first step would be trying to get a cost estimate from the contractor. How much would that cost? Because you need that number to apply for the loan. Once you know that number, and then you can look at the situation in terms of the payment and so forth, then you can decide, can you afford it? If you cannot afford it, at 0% if you're on a fixed income, then you can come to the Board of Health and say, well, I have some problems that we need to talk about. That is I think either the point 3 or the point 4 steps that we have to go through. Because you have to tell us, show us the information, why you're saying that you'll be hardship or not. And then we can listen and try to listen to what the town resident has to say.
Hopefully, you guys are discussing as part of the policy is making it as easy as possible for an individual so they do not have the added expense of hiring legal representation. They could probably wade through it themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
So far in the Board of Health, we have listened to a number of residents coming up from Stool Creeks. They don't have to hire a lawyer. I mean, we just, as citizens here, we don't want to have a huge expense on the legal fee.
Mm-hmm.
So,
great. Councilor Starr?
Thank you. My comment is for Mr. Santos, is that what the DPW has a handbook with, that's 30 pages long that maps it out for every homeowner, exactly what the steps are, what they have to do, and how to get financial help. So you've provided it in a handbook. So it seems like it's pretty well spelled out.
I did not look at the handbook, but on the website itself, it spelled out all the options that you can have in terms of the county loan. The bank, Cape Coast 5, I think, has one of the loan in there.
Yeah.
And then you kind of mentioned about the tax credit that you can claim in your annual taxes.
But there's also the county aqua fund that someone can apply for and within 2 or 3 days get an answer.
Yeah.
So,
When I
so
completed,
why, how does that take 6 months to do?
it's not 6 months in the sense that once you start the process, you have to go and apply. You get your application approved, and then you have to wait for the contractor to tell you, because right now the contractors are very busy. They cannot give you a price. Like say right now, I give you a price, and they can come tomorrow. No, you're talking about a month.
I can see if
2
somebody
months.
has a signed contract that, we can be there in 2 months or something, that's fine.
Yeah.
But verification of a loan application as a way to get just to get an extension doesn't seem like a real reason. I mean,
But-
I could wait 5.5 months and then apply for, and then say I couldn't get my loan. I don't know.
No, because by the time that you apply for it, as I'm communicating with the county loan officer, they say that it will be only a couple of days, and then you get your answers back. It wouldn't be, 6 months. What we are looking for is like you have to make your initiative to go and get your loan approved and all that process stuff. And then if the contractor has a problem of coming to your house to make that installations wise, then Tom McKeon can give you 6 months based on the information.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Schnapp? Is your mic on?
Yes.
There you
now
go.
it is.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions, and the first one I'd like to direct to Mr. Santos. In our CWMP, we have certain expectations for hookups to then, comply with the amount of nitrogen that's removed from our system. What's our tolerance for these hookups? I mean, do we, if we only did 75% of the hookups, would we be doing fine, or do we need to reach like 95%?
Dan Santos, Director of Public Works. So we need to get them all hooked up because the plan is contingent on meeting that expectation. That's why those certain number of homes are in the plan, is so we can reduce the nitrogen to a point that meets our regulatory requirements of the Clean Water Act, which is the total maximum daily limit for nitrogen in our coastal estuaries. That's why we recommended to the Board of Health, and they concurred in a 6-month time frame. Our goal is to get the nitrogen down as quickly as possible. So as soon as we get people hooked up to the system as it goes by their homes, the sooner we'll start dropping that nitrogen. So any homes that don't get connected ultimately are going to be problematic. So there's not a lot of tolerance. I mean, we ultimately have to hook up every one of those homes in order to meet that target. We haven't built in any, factor of safety, like extra homes in case people don't hook up.
Thank you. That was sort of what I was expecting to hear. So there's no tolerance for a certain percentage of these homeowners to claim financial hardship that would then prevent them for years and years not to hook up. You're confirming what I've...
Right. People are required to hook up, and the Board of Health will address any hardships or issues relative to waiving hookup time frame for their reasons. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Tom, I'm sure, could speak to that process.
I would recommend that the Board of Health seriously consider how they frame this decision to award extensions beyond the initial 6 months that might be due to the challenge with the supply of contractors. Because I understand that is going to be a real problem, as not only the town of Barnstable, but other communities around us are competing for the same pool of licensed contractors to do these sewer connections. The financial hardship piece, I would be very careful about actually incorporating that into a policy, because I believe that many people might sense that they have a financial hardship. All of us would. I mean, it's an added expense that they're going to have not only the sewer assessment, but the cost for the hookup. I think we're fortunate to be in a time where are lots of resources, and I'm hopeful that we bring in, or I'm suggesting that we bring in the Cape Cod Aqua Fund for workshop purposes, so that we can have a better understanding of their process. Because if people go through that, they're really spreading out the costs for that connection over a 20-year period, and if they're low income, at a 0% interest. So I would hope that really wouldn't be a huge burden for any of our homeowners in the town. We also have provisions, especially, and I think we may need to have, again, another opportunity to have this conversation about if you're over 65 and earn less than $40,000, and that could push your sewer assessment as a lien on your property. You don't even have to pay that, so that's that. So there's lots of ways that I think that financial relief can be given to our homeowners, which I think is vitally important. But I would caution the Board of Health from getting into the position where you're going to be hearing a lot of requests for extensions and waivers based on financial hardship. And if I look at other Board of Health regulations in other communities, that's not even contemplated. Or if it's there, it's not really spelled out as a reason for that extension. So I would look to that, and so that's my one comment. The other comment is, at some point, I would want to understand if this policy should be incorporated into our actual Board of Health regulations. Maybe not the way it's currently constructed, but it would seem like we'd want a place where anybody can go and see what the Board of Health regulations are related to sewer connections. So, thank you.
Sorry. Other comment, Council Lucky.
I just had a question, and Tom Lee, you mentioned Stewart's Creek. What are the lessons learned there? And is it accurate that some of those homes there are still not hooked up at this point, or have we finally gotten all of those hooked up?
No. As of yesterday, Tom McKeon informed me that there is 92% connected. There's still few homes that are not connected. But in Stewart Creek, they have a different policy. There is a formula based on the septic tank versus the leaching field, and then you calculate. So there's some homes out, don't have to connect to the sewer for another few years. But that policy is different from what this policy is. So that's why I want to separate this one versus the Stewart Creek. Stewart Creek is only a small segment. At that time, the town is not looking into the CWMP. Now the town is spending the money and doing the CWMP sewer collection system, and we should make a new policy to encourage people to connect to the sewer.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's kind of what I was getting at. Lessons learned there. That it's a totally different game now. Thank you.
Right.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you very much, President Penn, and thank you very much for your presentation. A couple of comments. One, regarding the innovative alternative systems that people have taken the time and effort and expense to install in their property. If they're along the sewer lines, are they going to be penalized for having made that investment for what they thought was helping our environment the very same way that the sewer is going to?
We have to take a look at each individual cases. I'm an engineer, so I know what the performance is on those IA systems. They are not equal. Everyone is different. And we have to compare that with if we send the sewer to the town's wastewater plant, what is the performance can I get from there compared to the IA systems? So we have to look at it case-by-case basis.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And secondly, this occurred to me when I was visiting with a family member over the holidays, and not having sewer service myself, but that was the case in this other household. I'm wondering if somewhere on the town's website we should have a one-pager of best management practices on what to put down the drain. Because I think people will be behaving differently if they have a sewer and think it's just going to go away. Whereas if they had their own septic system, they might be a little more sensitive to the impacts of mistreating their wastewater.
There are some information out there because in some community that primarily using the septic system, they have that kind of information sent it to the homeowner or somewhere that the homeowner can find.
Okay.
Yeah.
On our website.
Not on your website, but I'm just saying in some other towns
Okay.
that handling the septic system, they have those informations because you don't want to dump oil and grease into your septic tank.
Precisely.
You don't want to dump a lot of the solids into your tank because otherwise you just decreasing your volume in your septic tank.
Mr. Town Manager, did you want to make a comment?
So you're talking about, excuse me, Mark Ellis, Town Manager, you're talking about septic systems or talking about sewer?
I'm talking about best management practices on what to put down the drain, because
In general.
In general, because I do think that people will relax a little bit now that it's going to the town sewer, and they can handle this waste and might not be
That's how I understood your question. It's on our water pollution control website. It has been
Okay.
since I was Director of Public Works 20
Okay,
years
so
ago.
for the public to find it, they go where?
Go into we'll put it right front and center, okay? But right now, you go in, it's under Public Works Water Pollution Control.
Thank you.
But I think your point is well taken. Many people come here, and almost 90%, maybe 90% of our properties are not sewered, but they come from communities that are, and they don't think about that when they're at their second home or visiting. And they do put things down that shouldn't even be put down the sewer, but they put them down into their septic tank. Though I think your comment is really good in that we should put front and center for no matter what you put down the drain, this is what's appropriate.
point, but I do-
Water and bodily excretions, basically. Anything else, no.
That's
Thank
my
you for
Very simple.
keeping it clean.
Thank you, sir.
And wipe.
No wipes.
No
Yeah,
wipes.
we know, no wipes, no matter
Because
what they
there's a
say.
problem, there will be a problem with the lift stations, pumps.
Yeah. Ready Rooter and Roto Rooter can give you a very long list, and they're very happy for it. Yeah. Free advertising, I'm sorry about that, I apologize. Yes, Counselor Turkelson.
On Chris's or Councillor Clark's suggestion, I'm just wondering if when we're sending out "you are to be connected," we would like to include that sheet or where you find it, because as much as I still find the town site like Russian nesting dolls trying to find information. I know you're going to move it up, which is great, but it's kind of like if people don't know to go to the site to find it, maybe when we're mailing them, you need to hook up, this is where the resources are, and by the way, these are, or even where to go to find that. That might just be, people need more than one reminder.
Thank you. Other questions for them? No. Thank you for yours. Councilor Bloom, hi there.
Thank you, President Penn. Can you tell me what a sewer betterment charge is on the sewer bill that's recently come through?
That's not a good sign, a lot of heads turning around. Yeah, get the finance guy to do it. He's safe. Yeah.
It's all about money. So we don't know the answer to what the dollar amount of the better sewer assessment is going to be for this first round of projects, because the project isn't complete yet, but it's almost there. Once we have the total cost of that project and we've identified the number of dwelling units that project will ultimately serve, we'll have a figure for what that sewer assessment is going to be. The town council's ordinance limits or caps that sewer assessment at $10,000 right now. This first one's going to be much less than that, because the Strawberry Hill Road project is going to ultimately carry the sewage of thousands of properties, and so it's going to be divided amongst all those properties. So the direct abutters who are going to be assessed initially, which is around 260, I believe, will receive a sewer assessment notice of much less than $10,000. But we don't have that number yet, but we will soon.
Thank you. The person who got the sewer betterment charge on their bill has had sewer service there for decades. Are they supposed to be getting that sewer betterment charge?
No, the sewer betterments are only going to be, the sewer assessments are only going to be added to the property owners who are impacted by this new sewer construction.
So they should
No-
not have gotten that sewer betterment charge then?
Unless maybe, if were they part of Stewart's Creek project, then
No,
they
no.
would have a sewer betterment.
Linden Street in Hyannis.
Industry, yeah, if you could give me the
Precinct
property
9.
address, I'll take a look at it. But
you.
I'm not aware of any sewer betterments on Linden Street. Maybe it was a sewer utility.
50 Linden.
50 Linden, okay.
Well, I also have another question, but it may not be for you, Mr. Milne.
Okay.
There are some people in Hyannis who never hooked up to the sewer system decades ago when it first went through. You know, what kind of deadline do they have?
Must be third generation by now. That's interesting.
But is there a sewer going to be there or not?
Yes, the sewer does run right through past their house. It's on Chestnut Street in Hyannis, in Precinct 9. The sewer is there, has been there for decades. They just never hooked up to it. But now we have this drive to hook everybody up, and I'm wondering how much time do they have?
I don't know. I have to go back and look. Do you have the address?
I can
so that
give
we
you the
take a
address,
look?
sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All set? Okay. Yep.
The $200 fee that we could assess, is that like a one-time fee? Is that per day, per month, per year? How does that stack up as a motivator to get people to hook up?
Madam President and members of the Town Council, Brian Florence, the Building Commissioner and Director of Inspectional Services. Mass General Law 40, Section 21D is the non-criminal citation provisions that allow us to assess a $200 fee. Each day is a separate offense.
Each day
Each day.
as a separate offense. That's a quick motivator.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilor Schnapp, you still have a hand
Yeah, I
coming
did, and
up?
I had a question for Mark Milne. I'd hate to have you bring you back up, but I read somewhere, it might have been a draft of what is going out to customers for hookups, that the town could finance for 30 years the sewer connection. Is that still a possibility? I know that was originally discussed when we did the sewer assessment, but I didn't know if that option was still available.
We can certainly make that option available, but it's not a good option. The reason being it carries a much higher interest rate than the county's Aqua Fund program. And that program was created to deal with financial hardship, and it's a good program. They've been running it for 3 decades. And with the changes that they've made to it recently, with the sliding interest rate scales, amortization over a 20-year period, we're recommending that everybody look to that program first. That's the best program out there. Our program, we can do that, but it's going to be more expensive.
Do we want to even make that an option in any literature that we provide customers?
I'm going to reach out to DPW and see if that's something we think about including in that handbook that's going to go out soon.
Okay.
And yeah, we can certainly mention it, but with the caveat that it's not a good
Right.
option.
I'm actually vying toward the take it out instead of leave it in, but
Okay.
if it's, so, thanks.
Thank you.
Everybody set?
I have-
Oh, Councilor Clark?
Please, if you don't mind, here's a suggestion that as you develop this handbook for people to hook up to sewers, that very same handbook be available on the town's website for people who might be looking for a new home and don't have in their custody that information, but just for those who are fishing around. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Answered a lot of questions, and we really appreciate you being here to do that. Next, we have act on public session minutes. We have a fine set of minutes from 12:21 from our town clerk. I assume everybody's read them and asked her to fix her typos if there were any. I didn't see any. No, I'm kidding. So I would entertain a motion to approve if there are no amendments, changes? No?
Second.
All those in favor? Signify aye. Thank you. Anybody opposed, abstain? Voted unanimously. Thank you. Communications from elected officials, boards, committees, staff, commission reports. And right after this, we'll take a break, and then we have a lot of updates of good information coming from our staff. Anybody have any general communications? Am I right? Nada. Councilor Schnapp.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to give people a save the date of Saturday, January 27th for the annual Marston's Mills Ham and Beans Supper, which will be at the Liberty Hall. And 4 to 6, and it's delicious and it's a great deal. So,
Are you cooking?
I think my colleague over there might be.
Uh-oh. Secret recipes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
My old country buffet skill set
Aha.
will be going into effect.
You never know what's going to last you a lifetime in summer jobs. Any other announcements? No. All right. Seeing none, I think we're going to take about a 5-10 minute break, and then we'll come back in for our business. Thank you. Okay, we are reconvened, and I've had a request, and I think it's a great idea, to move our old business up now, so we have all the time in the world to do the presentations, because we have a very patient police chief in the back row, and there's no reason she has to be here all night. So, orders of the day. Councilor Tamish.
Okay, I would like to introduce, for old business, this may be acted on with a majority vote. Item number 202486, an order authorizing the award and execution of a 5-year contract with Axon Enterprise, Inc. for the purchase of body-worn cameras and the associated licensing and storage of all data to establish a body-worn camera program for the Barnstable Police Department.
Second.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, council members. Jean Chalice, Acting Chief of Police. The department is seeking permission to enter into a 5-year contract with Axon Enterprises in order to implement a body-worn camera program. We've been awarded a grant funding that'll allow us to purchase the initial hardware, but we will be using this contract to enable us to secure fixed pricing over 5 years for storage, licensing, and data management. The savings for bundling the package into a 5-year agreement is approximately $107,315 versus buying or leasing the equipment and extras a la carte or over a shorter 3-year contract. The 5-year contract is standard practice for most agencies due to the bundling savings that you get. This contract can be canceled during the fourth or fifth year should the body-worn camera program not be beneficial. However, the trend in law enforcement across the country and current recommendations are for all police officers to be equipped with cameras to ensure accountability, promote transparency, and support better training efforts.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the, yes?
Chief, I was just curious, in the past, data storage, retrieval, and that has always been an issue. Is this going to be done in-house, or is it stored off-site with retrieval, or how is that going to be accomplished?
So the storage will be in the cloud, and we will be managing it in-house. What we found is, so Axon will manage the data, but we will not be having to worry about redacting and that kind of stuff for court purposes, because we'll be sending most of that over to court unredacted. The redactions are going to be due to Freedom of Information Act requests, and so we are currently trying to evaluate what kind of personnel issues we're going to be dealing with for in-house purposes. But the data will be maintained in the cloud
Okay,
through
thank you.
Axon.
Other questions? To my right? No? On my left? No? All right. So we need a majority vote here, all at once, no roll call required. So all those in favor, say yes, put your hand up. Anybody opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And so we have now item 2024-087. Seth.
Thank you. This is an item of old business, referred for a public hearing. It can be acted on with a roll call majority vote of the full council. Item 2024-087, appropriation order in the amount of $73,654 for the Barnstable Police Department fiscal year 2024 operating budget for the purpose of funding the initial operating expenses for the hiring of 9 patrol officers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further presentation?
The department is seeking a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $73,654 in order to cover the operating expenses associated with hiring new police officers during this fiscal year. The funds cover pre-employment physicals, psychological assessments, academy costs, including tuition and uniforms, and equipment, including firearm, ammunition, and a portable radio. The expenses support all of our FY24 hires. We currently have 1 officer graduating from the police academy on January 16th. We have 2 recruits beginning the academy in February, and we have 2 new hires who were previously academy trained. They've begun their in-house training, and they'll be ready to hit the streets at the end of January or early February. We will also be sending candidates to a July academy So their pre-academy expenses, such as their medicals and psychological evaluations and their academy equipment, will need to be purchased in this fiscal year, but not their tuition. So this is a one-time expense associated with this specific group of candidates just for FY24.
Thank you. Questions? Oh, I'm sorry. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
I thought it was continued from last time, no? Okay. Do we have a second? All those in favor of opening public hearing?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Anybody wish to speak to this issue from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public, and nobody online? Okay. I remembered to check. We'll close the public hearing. All in favor? Yeah. Anybody opposed? All righty. So, do we not have to vote on the item? Yeah. We had a first and a second. Councilor Neary?
Just a question, what is a ProBook?
Oh, the ProBooks are laptops that we were required to purchase. The Academy previously allowed us to use tablets, which were less expensive. However, last year they mandated that we provide laptops for our recruits.
Council Crowe?
Chief, I just have a quick question. Do municipalities get a discount on some of these items like firearms, ammunition, that kind of stuff? Because I understand those have gotten very expensive. Does public municipalities get any kind of discount from the manufacturers for those?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we, certain items you're able to purchase on state contracts, but not that I'm aware of. I can't speak to that. I'm sorry.
Councilor Schnepp?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Chief Chalice. Will there be any costs for these 9 slots that will go into our next fiscal year that aren't included in this appropriation?
So any of the recruits that are going to be attending the academy that begins in July, their tuition will be.
Could you talk into the mic more directly, please?
Sure. The academy tuition for the recruits that enter in July will have to be paid in July.
In July, so that'll be part of your upcoming.
In their initial issue of their uniforms that they acquire for graduation and things like that. But their academy uniforms will be purchased prior to their entering.
Okay.
So there will be some equipment and their tuition that will be paid in FY25.
Okay.
Council Levesque?
Thank you, President Penn. Just want to compliment the Barnstable Police Department on the fact that not only are you getting new recruits, placing them in the police department, but we're also getting lateral moves from other police departments, which I think is a great sign for our community and for our police department. So kudos to the Barnstable Police Department for attracting already trained officers that can probably hit the ground running a little bit faster than obviously the ones coming out of the academy. So I just wanted to recognize that and say thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so I believe, is this a roll call? No. Majority vote. It's an appropriation, it doesn't say. See, I was right. Amazing.
Councilors Bloom,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Mendes,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn,
Yes.
Schnapp,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Tamish,
Yes.
Turkelson.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Thank you all for your support. Next on the agenda, we have 3 wonderful discussions. The first one is the update on discussions with Avangrid and Tom LaRosa, First Assistant Town Attorney, that's a mouthful, is here to grace us with his presence.
Good evening. I see the green light. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi.
Thank you.
Tom LaRosa, First Assistant Town Attorney. Thank you, councilors. Here to update on discussions with Avangrid regarding the Park City Wind project. Last month, in advance of the Energy Facility Siting Board's public hearing on the final decision, the town on December 11th filed an amended motion to intervene in the proceedings, which included a number of requested conditions that the Siting Board should make to the decision. The Siting Board denied the town's petition to intervene. However, they added a condition to the final decision, Condition T, that directed Park City Wind to meet with the town to discuss the town's recommended conditions, and then Park City Wind is obligated to report back to the Siting Board by this Friday, the 5th, tomorrow. The discussions were limited to, follow the directive of the Siting Board, and were limited to the specific conditions that the town requested in its amended petition to intervene. It did not extend to other matters, specifically things that the board approved in the decision. These conditions, that we met, I'll get into the conditions, but we met, Attorney Charles McLaughlin and myself met with Avangrid on December 20th for a first meeting, and then Attorney McLaughlin did have some intervening conversations with Avangrid to just flesh out a few things after our initial meeting. Attorney McLaughlin and I met on Tuesday, the 2nd, with Avangrid, where they responded to our initial conversation. The concerns that were raised in our amended petition concerned electromagnetic field testing, a request for a more robust construction and scheduling and sequencing plan, much of that to address some of the lessons learned in the Vineyard Wind project. The town requested that for containment at the proposed onshore substation at Shoe Flying Hill Road, that in addition to what was already required, that the major containment item, the major items containing dielectric fluid would have, that all of the items, anything containing dielectric fluid would have containment, that no PFAS foams were used for fire suppression. We were looking for disclosure of any hazardous materials, fluids that would be present at the facility. And we had also touched upon our, looking for better engagement on the emergency response plan. We discussed those, as I said, initially on the 20th. The town came back, Avangrid came back with some proposals on the 2nd. And just that, Attorney McLaughlin and I provided some feedback for a little bit better tweaking on that. I'd say Avangrid was, they, I think, met the town's proposals. Most importantly, that they did agree that at the proposed substation, all of the components that contain dielectric fluid would have containment. So concrete would be under everything, and any the units that the non-major units are all sealed as they are with leak detection, would sit on concrete, and any fluids or any water that would flow from that concrete into the system that's intended to treat stormwater and, for example, and catch any like oil absorbent material to catch it to any release. So they did address that. They would address EMF monitoring. The decision from the Energy Facility Siting Board addressed EMF testing at Craigville Beach, but that was basically it. They have agreed to do testing along the onshore cable route and at the western edge of the substation. And there's a commitment not to use PFAS foams, and that the manufacturers, they would get a certification that the foams that they're using would not include PFAS. The emergency response plan, rather than just something they would submit to the Energy Facility Siting Board within 30 days of going operational, they will work with the town, particularly the fire chiefs, to incorporate concerns and, work on getting the appropriate procedures in place for emergency conditions. And likewise, they did agree to that they will work with us on the construction and sequencing plan. So they did respond to all of the items that were listed in our required conditions, except that there was not, we did, in the only town's requested condition that wasn't discussed concerned hours of construction, because the Energy Facilities Siting Board set that in their decision. Basically, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. with the possibility to stage, to arrive on site at 6:30 in the morning, no work on Saturday. At least it was important that the town raised that concern, and I think it was heard, given that we did hear feedback from folks about noise in the neighborhoods on the work. So I think that's the summary of where we are. And at this point here, they would be, Park City is finalizing its report. It's really a letter to the Energy Facilities Siting Board. We've seen a draft of it, and we should have that in the morning. And they plan to make, once we have that and look at it, they would make their filing tomorrow to meet the Siting Board's deadline. Hopefully I've covered that.
Okay,
in detail. Questions,
are you
folks?
all set? You done? You all set?
I am all set,
Okay.
thank you.
Questions? Council Luggy?
Yeah, is this it then? Once this is submitted, this discussion is done?
No, I wouldn't say the discussion is done. I mean, we have their agreement, particularly for the, I'm the lawyer. What would be in a construction sequencing plan is not my bailiwick. Likewise, what would be in an emergency response plan is not. But at least this sets the framework for conversations on both the construction sequencing plan and for the emergency response plan, for example, so that they're engaging with the appropriate officials who understand these things, so we can get the right plan in place.
Yeah.
For it.
Well, my question specifically has to do with what Tom Cambereri said in the public comment. Again, I've worked with Tom before on the PFAS issues and things like that. I find him very knowledgeable, and I thought his insights into the monitoring were quite good. I don't know if we had an opportunity to perhaps dovetail his ideas into this. I mean, he's talking about the Vineyard Wind, but could his level of monitoring be looked at? In this agreement, you talked about there is some monitoring. Could it be enhanced?
So for the EMF?
For the current, that's why I was asking, is this a done deal? Could the monitoring you discussed be enhanced to the degree to match what Tom recommended?
What Park City Wind is committed to this point, and there's nothing to stop them in the future from committing to something further. But that for every year for the first 3 years, they would do monitoring along the onshore cable route at 1 mile intervals, and as I mentioned, at the substation. And then after the 3 years, they would do monitoring every 5 years. So that's a floor that they've agreed to. At least for what they will report back to the Energy Facilities Siting Board on tomorrow.
Okay, well, I still wonder if we could get that enhanced to the degree that Tom Cambereri described. That's my comment.
Councilor Neary?
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Attorney LaRosa. My question would be, when you speak of the items that the town's looking for as being addressed and agreed, so is this contractually it's going to be written, it's going to be in the contract, I hope?
There is, they will be making their representation back to the siting board that these are the things that they will be doing. There are, a number of these items, for example, the construction sequencing plan, and that we have their agreement on, we would address that, for example, in the trenching permits that the town would issue for the project. We would still retain a certain level of local authority to issue permits as long as they're not inconsistent with or would frustrate the activity under the siting board decision. But yet we will we will need to review, for example, they've made their commitment of the containment. We would still need to see the designs on that, but we do have, we would have that level of
Yeah,
commitment.
containment will probably be like a moving target, right? But the main thing, I guess, they're going back to the siting board now, so they could, in effect, come back and say, yeah, we like your thoughts, but beat it. So, I mean, is this going to be like, contractually done?
We would work with them to ratchet everything down for the framework on that. They are making the representation to the siting board tomorrow that these are the things they're going to do. There isn't the decision itself.
I like
your
going
words
to
are well
do, yes,
taken.
it's-
The decision itself is not going to be reopened, and that's done. But these are it's a commitment that they're publicly making to the siting board, and that we will work with them to implement.
Okay, and write it up okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Turkelson?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. As far as the monitoring for the first 3 years, every mile, how often are they going to do that monitoring?
The first 3 years, it's every year.
Just once a
Make
year?
sure I'm speaking correctly. From my notes here, 1 second. Don't want to mess that up, but that is,
Same thing down, frequency.
so they would perform the monitoring for the onshore cables, after the first energization, when the facility is capable of producing 400 megawatts and at full operation. And they would perform the monitoring once per year for 3 years, and then once every 5 years.
Okay, in the containment system that they would recommend has not been determined yet. We don't have those plans. Do we have the containment plans in our records somewhere of what has been installed for the Vineyard Wind project?
For the monitoring?
No, for the containment systems, for the dielectric fluids and that stuff. I'm assuming that part of what they're doing is they're taking what we asked for part then and using it now. So if I wanted to know what those containment systems look like, we have those records, or they're...
For Vineyard Wind, whether we have the final design plans, I have to check on that and get back to you, but there's an understanding of what the containment is.
Okay. And I'm just wondering, and again, I could read some more. In theory, all that fluid comes down, it gets cleaned, it gets absorbed, and I guess I'm wondering who monitors that collection of fluids so that we know that that system is working effectively. I'm just wondering if that's a state thing, is that a town thing, is that an Avangrid thing?
The obligation to construct, operate, and maintain it would be, for Avangrid.
And if they don't maintain their systems, what is our recourse as a town if we find or feel they're not doing their end of the bargain? Kind of speaking to what Councilor Neary was saying is, they say they'll do it, and if they don't, then what is our recourse as a town to protect ourselves and our residents?
The larger containment system for the major components, that obligation is already within the final decision of the siting board. So they are obligated to do that. That if they didn't do that, that just wouldn't be the town's issue. That would be their issue with their siting board permit, as well as their environmental filings that were approved by the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs. And this would be, would be the lesser, I don't want to call them lesser, but not the non-major systems would be part of that as well now.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Clark.
Thank you very much, President Penn, and thank you very much, Attorney LaRosa. As I listened to Councilor Turkelson's remarks, I too kind of am taken aback that the test will only be once a year, once they're fully engaged. Once this data is collected, can it be shared with the public? Is there a portal or a place for the town's residents to find information that Avangrid has been obligated to collect so that the public can see?
Good question. I don't know the answer on how the information would be communicated to the public. It would be collected. We would have it. We can discuss with them about how to get that information out, whether, for example, that they would post it on their website.
Right, and then I would hope
should be
that
made public.
Barnstable, the town of Barnstable's website could have a link to it, just so that the residents don't have to hunt for it. Thank you.
Other comments? Questions? Council Starr,
Thank you.
and then Council Lucky.
Thank you, Mr. LaRosa. A couple of questions. So they're gonna test for the EMFs every mile? Are they gonna test at the beach?
The EMF testing every mile. So there's
Test at the beach?
every mile, I make sure I understand, every mile for the onshore route, they would be doing the testing.
So they're gonna test at the beach?
Hmm?
Are they gonna test right at the beach? I mean, Mr. Cambereri said.
The beach is already, they already have testing requirements that are in the final decision for Craigville Beach. There is EMF testing that's there that's based on the final decision. The town requested more, so we specifically requested the onshore route and substation testing.
So they're required by EFSB to test the beach like every year? Is that
I'd have to go back and check the particular language, but yeah, I believe they do have I think it is similar don't hold me to it the first, I can get back to the first 3 years, every year, and then there's a period after that. Likewise, with the ramp up for first energization and eventually to full commercial operation, there's corresponding requirements in the final decision for that for Craigville Beach. But the siting board only addressed Craigville Beach, and, so we weren't going back. Our requested condition addressed the route and the substation, so we weren't focused on what the board had already approved.
So how many spots on Craigville Beach will they test?
How
many spots on Craigville Beach will they test?
Make sure I understand what you're saying. So they would be doing what would happen at each spot on the 1 mile for the testing?
How many spots are there on Craigville Beach?
I'm not sure. Sorry.
One? 3?
I can go back and check. I was prepared to respond to the discussions. I apologize on this condition T, but I can go back and get you the information on Craigville Beach.
I'm just thinking that we want as many as possible would be great. Okay. So they've agreed not to use PFA in their foam?
Yes, no PFAS.
So when do they use foam? Who uses foam?
Whatever firefighting agents they would use would not have PFAS in them.
So they would be fighting the fires?
Whatever, their fire suppression plan will be part of their emergency response plan and what they would use, but going into that, it no agents would contain PFAS.
Are they gonna, is there any financial help for us to rejigger our fire departments to give them the equipment and the equipment they're gonna need?
Our request to the siting board for the conditions, our request to the siting board, the conditions that we had submitted, it did not cover that.
Okay, it's too bad, okay. Back to somebody asked the question about inspections. When the transformer station is done, who inspects it? Is it the town building inspector? Does the EFSB come down to make sure that it matches what they've required?
The town would, I don't believe the town has jurisdiction over the inspection.
Who's the building inspector that says you're done?
I would have to see how they get their final sign-off from the DPU and the FSB, but it would not be.
So is there somebody from the state who will come down and inspect the whole place?
I believe so. I can get the.
Maybe, okay. Do they come more than once a year? Do they come more than once?
Sorry, in terms of who gives the final sign-off on the construction of the substation, what public official that is, I can, whether it comes from the State Department of Public Safety or DPU, I can confirm that.
Does DPU ever do periodic visits to transformer stations?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
I don't expect you to know. I'm just sort of talking out loud. Okay. I just wondered. Because we're wondering, if it gets built and it's done, what happens 4 years down the road? Is somebody looking at it?
I can find out. The substation, obviously there are a number of substations on the Cape and elsewhere.
Yeah.
There must be an established process for that. We can get that information for you.
Okay, thank you. Dielectric fluids response. No, I have one more question, sorry. It's about PF6. Did you ask about this chemical PF6 that they're using to cool the transformers?
About what?
PF6.
I think you're talking about the gas? Or
SF6.
SF6 gas, I think?
sulfur?
I don't know
fluoride,
much about
Sexaflor?
them. We didn't discuss those. It wasn't part of what our comments to the siting board, but if there's, the siting board did approve the use of those gases as part of the substation.
Okay. Okay. I don't think they should be there, but it sounds like the transformer station on Independence Park doesn't have any SF6 in it. Do you know that?
My understanding is that the substation has, and I can confirm this, Council, I can follow up with you, and if I'm keeping a list here of some of the
But it's somehow
the general
it's
questions,
it's
but
more of an air
as
cooled.
to, my understanding was that the facility would use SF6 and dielectric fluid. We can confirm that for you.
Okay, thanks.
You good? Council Lucky?
Thank you. I just had a follow-up. When you had these discussions, you mentioned yourself and Attorney McLaughlin. What subject matter experts did the town rely on to understand some of these more technical aspects, such as the electromagnetic monitoring? Who did you rely on to refute or to kind of debate what Avangrid proposed?
I showed up in September, so I was not, came to work for the town in September, so I'm really not familiar. For years, this Attorney McLaughlin's been very involved in the middle of this project, and I know that those were issues that he was involved in. I would, need to go back, given that I wasn't directly involved in those, but I can take back that specific question.
Yeah. No, I asked because it certainly came up at the meeting of the voters at the high school. There was enormous discussion within the public of how did we get here? I mean, genuine concern. How did we get here? We don't understand the process. And in negotiating, host agreements and things, it was done maybe behind a bit of a veil. And then we have Tom Cambrieri, who is just a gem that we have him here on Cape Cod. And he comes up with some really spot on, I think scientifically fantastic things. And then we allow Avangrid to come forward with the minimum. Maybe it's not even the minimum, because we don't know. We don't have a subject matter expert that's looking at this. And I would hope we'd refute this and go back. Again, as I said earlier when I responded to his, from the governor on down, everybody's, praising this. But we're the guinea pigs. We're the ones here. And we ought to ask for a little bit more. The town shouldn't be on the hook for doing this monitoring. I thought he had great ideas. Let's let people know, my goodness. So I hope we do come back and we find a subject matter expert. Maybe Tom is a place to start. And refute some of this when we're talking to Avangrid. And, I understand, I'm not putting you on the spot. You guys are attorneys, and certainly Attorney McLaughlin has been engaged with this, for decades. I mean, he's a fantastic resource. But it comes a time when you need some subject matter experts to help you out. So that again, would be my plea to please, especially in this monitoring, to really push back and, proceed as Tom Cambrieri recommended.
Councilor Schnapp, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Attorney LaRosa. Since you're just keeping a laundry list, I just add something to it. Given that the monitoring is going to be only on an annual basis after the initial monitoring, I would want to make sure that it isn't done like on a calendar year, but at full capacity, given that the wind, it might not be 800 megawatts when they're doing the testing. And we probably want to make sure that's consistent across the times that they're testing the system.
There's at the initial energization, 400 megawatts, but then the full energization as well, so at the maximum capacity.
But even given, it is dependent on wind, that any given day it might not be at its full use. So I would just think we want to make sure that it's at its maximum when it's tested.
Fair point.
Councilor Crowe.
Thank you, President Penn. I have to agree with Councilor Ludke about the subject matter experts. I think that's very important. What I'd like to ask is that, heaven forbid there's an accident or a leakage, and it gets into our aquifer. What liability has Avangrid in cleanup, what is their financial liability in cleanup? Do you know what that is?
What is
Is
their-
there a maximum amount they're willing to, they've agreed to, or?
Try to understand the condition, if there were a release of
Yes.
hazardous materials into the environment?
Yes.
Separately, under state law, Chapter 21E of the general laws, and under federal law, CERCLA, they would have strict liability for release of hazardous materials into the environment. There's no cap on that under the statute.
No cap. So they would be solely responsible for the cost of that to our environment.
And, if there is a release of oil or hazardous material into the environment, the State Department of Environmental Protection administers Chapter 21E. They would be the ones issuing a notice of responsibility to the responsible parties. But the statute 21E sets up, it's a strict liability regime. The state doesn't ask whether you made a mistake or at fault. It's whether it happened, you're responsible, you clean it up. There isn't a financial cap in the statute.
All right, thank you for that answer. Appreciate it.
Councilor Torkelson.
If the policy as written that they have been asked to take out and name the town of Barnstable as an insured on the policy, if that policy has a limit for an environmental disaster, basically what you're saying is that Chapter 21E would supersede that limit above and beyond whatever their policy is that they've purchased.
Under the host community agreement, they would have an obligation to provide insurance to the town. We're not there yet on policies, but regardless of what policies that may be in effect that they may have that list the town as an additional insured, the 21E doesn't care about that. It is separate. They don't care about the ability to pay or what representations the responsible party may have made to someone else. It's still their obligation to clean up. But yeah, the insurance policies would be basically what would provide protection to the town. Typically, many of these are usually about personal injury and property damage, but we'd get down into the details for general liability, auto, and other risks that it would cover.
So we're relying on, if we don't think that the coverage, say in the Vineyard Wind project, if that coverage we would feel would be insufficient, we feel we're protected under this Chapter 21E.
Yeah, in terms of the cleanup, if there's a release from the substation, the town is not an owner or operator of the substation, didn't cause the release. We're not a responsible party under 21E. That would run to in the language of the statute, the owner operator, which would be Park City Wind. That's who the state would turn to, go after, so to speak, to make sure that the cleanup occurs.
So if the substation at Chute Flying Hill Road that's proposed was to have a leak, although we don't own that substation, it is in our town, affecting our lakes and our water, our sole source aquifer, we would have recourse under Chapter 21E. I know I'm asking this 5 times over, I'm just processing.
21E is an efficient mechanism. The statute's set up that way to make cleanups occur. And that's the way this starts. But we're hoping that the containment mechanisms that we negotiated will reduce the risk, but point noted, there's no way to take all risk off the table.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Councilor Tamish.
If I could ask the town manager, regarding the monitoring that Tom Cambieri mentioned, is this something that the town could get involved in? I certainly think that as Vineyard Wind ramps up, right now I think they have one turbine going, producing less than 5% of the power. As they ramp up, could the town do some monitoring if Avangrid is not going to?
Absolutely. I think that we need to include information to our residents. It's something we're looking at. The earlier discussions about signage were more relevant to, they really weren't informational in nature. They were more whether it's a hazard or not. And obviously, that's the discussion we're having, but certainly we can do more. I think the subject matter experts, especially if we're going to try to head there, would be something we would want to bring in to understand the best way to do that.
Correct.
Throughout these project discussions, what's been presented, primarily through Attorney McLaughlin and to the staff, are several things. Monitoring of the cables. They have a SCADA system. We have them on our water and our wastewater systems. But basically, it's a computer monitoring system that looks at heat. It looks at voltage. I have to check to see. I don't remember off the top of my head about EMF. That's constant. There always. If something goes wrong, there's two ways they shut down the system. Automatically, or I call it a switch, but they can do it manually. So they need to be compliant with whatever the regulations are that are in place. So I don't want you to walk away thinking this isn't being monitored, nor has it been discussed. I just want to clarify whether the SCADA monitors the EMF. There were a lot of discussions about this early on. But to go beyond, yeah, of course we can. Do we want to? No. We want them to do this. Sure. And there's many reasons why they should want to do this, especially because we're the first landing location. And what's more important than to be able to show the public that this is a safe project? And if it's not, then it should be shut down. So, I don't know that answers your question, but I had talked to Tom briefly. I only got his memo almost 6 o'clock tonight. But certainly, we're already looking at that. I actually took 3 scientists, 1 from Hui and 2 from UMass, out there last week to take a look at the Colville site, just because there's a tremendous amount of national interest in what's occurring. And we're hearing about it now on the radio. So, one of our primary roles is to protect public health and safety. So certainly we will continue to perform in that manner. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think the question really is that there seems to be a lot of interest in the EMF, and there should be.
Yeah.
And if in fact Auburn Grid is only going to monitor once a year at certain points along the line, I think the town should proactively look at, I'm not suggesting daily, weekly, monthly, I don't know what the proper interval or the proper sequencing or placing of the monitor should be, but I think there should be some more monitoring than is apparently proposed.
My experience with EMF in dealing with what our residents of Centerville had brought to us with a much different facility is that, and we will confirm this, but the regulatory requirements for this monitoring are probably exactly what Tom's describing.
Right.
And so that's what's been offered, and typically that's what's approved by the EFSB, thank you, when they approve projects. So can we do more? Yes. And so whatever we do, we want to do what's appropriate. My hope would be that in an effort to demonstrate the safety of the project, that the proponent will step up and do this. But I'll bring back a report on if we have to do it, what it would be and what it would cost and how we would do it. All of it should be available to our public. We all go to our beaches and utilize our roadways, walk our sidewalks, and no aspect of this should be above any compliance level. So, and immediate action will be taken if we find that it is, but, we don't want to ever get there.
Yeah, I think it's very important, at least during the initial period, to find out what they are and to keep people informed and
Absolutely.
to allay any fears that might be out there. I mean, it may show that everything is great. And
Very well, you would think that somebody in that business would want to seize that opportunity and communicate that.
Sure. Thank you.
Create new standards. Councilor Mendez?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a quick question. What happens if there's leakage at a substation or contamination? and Avangrid files bankruptcy?
Sorry, Counselor.
What happens if there's leakage or contamination at a substation and Avangrid files bankruptcy?
The question, what happens if Avangrid files bankruptcy?
If there's leakage or contamination, and then they file bankruptcy, does the town have any recourse?
That is a complicated question in terms of they would have temporary bankruptcy protection. This is typically DEP is involved. They have with potential bankruptcies in terms of coordinating cleanups where a responsible party wouldn't be there.
Would the state, would it bounce back to the state and the state take care of the cleanup?
I can't say that the state would guarantee the costs, but DEP would be the front line for coordinating the response for that.
Okay, thank you.
Particularly in the near term, to be responsive to if you have something moving in the environment, to make sure that gets addressed.
Okay.
They don't sit around to wait to see how the dollars get sorted out down the road.
Okay, so DEP would step in at that point?
That has been my experience.
Okay, thank you.
Council Starr?
Just in my experience, Mr. Mendez, that DEP step, I'm thinking about the Barnstable Fire Training Academy, where PFOs and PFAs they used the foam for so long. they've been working on that for 5-6 years. They capped some of it. No, they can't find Monsanto to get money out of them. It's taken forever, and there isn't enough money to pay for the cleanup. So I'm just throwing that out there. That's what we've seen around here. Thank you.
One thing, just.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's totally different, because that is, those fire things, those fire academies were county or town. So that we're talking something totally different. We're talking apples and oranges here, because it goes back to the county, not a private company. So we're talking two different things here.
Council Crowe?
I want to touch on what Councilor Mendez said. This corporation is listed as a limited liability corporation. Okay, so therefore, it obviously limits their liability. You were talking about the state statute or the DEP statute 21E or something. Does that allow us to go after the parent company for some of these costs?
Excuse me, Counselor, I was having a hard time hearing that last part.
I'm sorry. I said, you were talking earlier about the, I think it's DEP 21E,
Yep.
Okay, about how there's no limit to the liability. But as Councilor Mendez also mentioned, is that if they declare bankruptcy, then that throws that out the window. And that's easily, if it's a large cleanup cost, I could see that happening very quickly. My question is, does DEP, since this is an LLC, are they able to go after the parent company of this? I think they set it up in LLC so that nobody could go after
I
them.
think the LLC structure is set up as,
for that
as
reason.
it is, the way for insulating liability. I mean, there is, obviously getting a field here, but there's, what's presumably a very valuable infrastructure set up between the wind farm. But, I can't really speak to, what would be the cash flows for, if they seek bankruptcy protection, presumably that, can only speculate, but there would be, the bankruptcy court would be stepping in through the appointed bankruptcy trustee to address the obligations of the company, of Park City Wind, if that happened.
Okay, I don't know if that answered my questions about the law as for, I know it's an LLC, I know that's why they set it up, but is there any accommodation for that, as far as damaged parties have an opportunity to go after the parent company?
I mean, this is, a little bit of a field of what I was thinking of talking about tonight, but we can go back and look at this further. But basically, you have, the company will have an obligation to comply with the siting board decision and state law, just like every other company would have for their operations. And if they don't meet those obligations, there are, in this case, the siting board, DEP, and others that are, for example, DEP has its, obligation to, regulate and protect the environment, and that they would step in and address these things. I mean, of course, there are complications that every, company has the ability to seek bankruptcy protection, and what that might mean for, allowing them to reorganize their affairs, but they would still continue to do business and, are supposed to meet their requirements under the law. I can't speak to tonight what happens if the entity decides that it's not going to comply with the law.
Thank you for that answer. I think if it is a significant spill, their ability to pay for any of these things in the long run are very small. I think that the liability will be so large that would bankrupt the company, and therefore the taxpayer or the citizens are going to have to pay for this cost. That's what I'm concerned about.
Council Mendez?
Just to clarify, I really don't care who pays for it as long as it's not us. So the DEP will cover it if they file bankruptcy.
DEP, initially, if there's a release, they would send out a notice of
Yeah.
responsibility to the responsible parties, and DEP, in court, they're represented by the Attorney General's office. They would use their efforts to advance a cleanup.
Could you speak into the mic?
Okay. They also have processes for if someone's not being responsive. I've heard how well those processes, sorry.
Thank you.
The DEP does have their processes for, through the Attorney General's office for enforcement to get compliance. And if, that doesn't happen or it takes longer than it should, I mean, DEP's, they're the state agency that would advance the cleanup.
Okay, thank you.
How that gets funded, it's, they wouldn't be looking to the town as a responsible party, but ultimately where the dollars come from, I couldn't say whether it be a state appropriation or elsewhere.
Yeah, because I'm just worried about, I don't want the town to have to pay for it. I don't want to pay for it out of any tax dollars, but most importantly, the town.
Understood.
Okay.
Council Levesque?
Thank you, President Penn. Maybe there's a possibility, maybe through the town manager, that could contact the state, the agencies, appropriate state agencies, maybe DEP, talk to the commissioner, EFSB, and ask them, would you please put in some form of writing that you're going to be the secondary party, the state will fill the gap. I think that, again, I'm not saying that they're going to say yes. I'm just saying that we should put them on the spot, and we should ask them that we shouldn't be responsible. And if you're going to be forcing, I mean, the EFSB is an organization that was created to override municipalities, and if they're going to do that, then they should carry the burden that if there's some sort of, I mean, it just happened in Dover, Massachusetts, with the Charles River, with some dielectric fuel, much smaller amount that would occur if there was a leak of such a kind over here in one of these substations or the cable. So with that, I don't think it would hurt to ask Town Manager Ellis.
No, I didn't ask you to say that, ask that question. Mark Ellis, Town Manager, I've already had the discussions, and I think they should even, given that the EFSB has authority to approve things, land uses in communities in our state and supersede our authority, and that, the Cape is a unique location in that we live on top of the water we drink, and we have zoning in place with our GP and WP zones that otherwise would prohibit this from occurring. But the FSB has the authority to approve this and allow it to proceed. I have already had discussions relevant to saying that the state, in the event of what is being discussed here, should step in and take full responsibility for their actions in permitting this. So it's under discussion. Now, I don't have that authority to direct what occurs here. But yes, we've begun those discussions. We've asked for that. And I didn't get a negative response. I got a recognition that what I've just said is the way it works, and that there are significant issues, certainly here on Cape Cod, unique, in consideration of how the rest of Massachusetts may get its water.
Thank you, Town Manager Giles.
Yes.
Thank you. One more?
I'm just curious if there's been any other precedent set with a private company such as Avangrid causing, because of their product, an environmental issue and going bankrupt, and how that proceeded. Do we have some examples, or are we also the test case dummy for this as well? Just wondering if we know of any historical background that we could draw data from. Example, we had company A, they put this thing in, it had a problem, they went bankrupt, and basically these people ended up having to pay. Or is this just a new area that we could possibly be the first case example for any other community going forward? And I know the Dover thing happened, but did they find out where that came from? So I guess I'm just saying specifically, like you were saying, is that we have a private company versus, a town-related or a county-related activity. Those are two different things. So maybe their liability levels are different because the county, I don't know, maybe the county could go bankrupt. But I'm just wondering if there's other examples where private entities have caused an environmental disaster and gone bankrupt, and then the result is which people had to pay for the cleanup.
Put that on your list. Councilor Vec.
I think it would be great. I mean, I know there's trust issues in regards to asking Avangrid to come up with information, and I know it's been said a number of times that here in Barnstable we're the guinea pig, so to speak. But there are, offshore wind projects, other places in the world that, quite honestly, Avangrid and other companies are involved with. So I would be interested in putting the burden on them to find out certain instances where, or other companies, find out where these disasters may have taken place, if there's been a disaster, where there's leaks been on offshore, because it's the substations, too, that are offshore that are a danger as well, not just here on land. And also, there's land-based. I had during my Thanksgiving vacation, all this wind farm discussion. I was on vacation in California, driving around California, and there are wind farms, land-based wind farms, everywhere in California, throughout the Sierra Mountains, and so I'm sure that there's been cases even here on our soil that there are possibly leaks or different things. So I think that maybe we can delve into that. We are the guinea pig for offshore wind in the United States, but I think there should be plenty of cases that we can look into and find out if there's been instances of disasters or complications in other areas. Thank you.
The town manager explained these are, permitted outside of our control and overriding our zoning. As to, I don't know offhand whether there's been any substations in Massachusetts where there's been a failure in a release and a cleanup hasn't occurred the way it's supposed to. I just don't know. I apologize.
Councilor Crowe.
Just one quick question, Attorney LaRosa. We asked you earlier you were asked about the subject matter experts that were involved with Charlie when he was doing these. You wouldn't have a good answer for that. Mark, do you have the answer for that? Who we had working with us at the time?
Your question was specific to EMF, correct? We had a subject matter expert engaged in the development of the containment system and management of hazardous materials issues throughout the process, including the specification for how the containment would work. So there will be as-built at the end of that process. At this point, I would assume they're there for Vineyard Wind. I haven't seen them myself. Relevant to EMF, we have not engaged anybody, but we could certainly do that, and we could certainly take that information moving forward. On the other side of that, everything that's been presented so far has not indicated a problem relevant to EMF. EMF is, and you know, we should look more broadly, even though, again, a different application, but you know, the standards by which they measure in many cases are standards that are in question. And if you go back to the comments that the town of Barnstable have made relevant to that, we've called for the regulators to review that. So, you know, the standard is a regulatory one established by the federal government in the case of EMF. So we would want to talk more. So we're going to bring in somebody. Are we looking to use the federal standards as the measure to which we would expect this project to perform? I'm assuming at a minimum, yes. And what's been presented so far is that it would be below those standards. So I think going out and measuring to make sure is their responsibility, and if they don't do it, we'll do it. And if they're not in compliance, we should proceed appropriately. To answer your question on EMF, we did not bring in a subject matter expert relevant to what they were stating about EMF. We relied on the state of Massachusetts to review and approve that.
Thanks, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We good right now? So if I understand, they have, Park City basically has this letter that they're responding to EFSB tomorrow by noon or whatever time it is, and you're going to get a copy, and as far as you know, there's no major changes.
There is a draft letter that they shared today. They're cleaning it up and will share what should be their final letter in the morning, which they would then, after having provided to the town, they would file sometime before the close of business.
And then that closes this issue as far as EFSB is concerned. There's no Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4 coming down the pike. This is it.
This is the, again, there's the final decision has been issued. This is a condition as a directive to the company to discuss
Stuff.
with the town and make a filing, but the decision is closed, you know, subject to, you know, appeal, however the appeal process might play out by others, and that there isn't a butter who has appealed.
Yes,
And
thank
a butter
you.
withstanding who's intervened has appealed.
Thank you. Okay, we're good for now. Thank you very much. I understand it's new for you, new turf.
Thank you, councilors.
Did the best you could.
Great job.
Next on the agenda, we have review of town charter with Attorney Nober. She went back to get more coffee, I saw that. I'm just kidding.
There it goes. I think I need my clicker. Good evening, councilors. Karen Nober, Town Attorney. I'm going to go over the town charter with you tonight. We'll try to keep it relatively brief. There's actually a lot in it. It's a dense document. Questions come up. I have to go back and read it every time. So I will do my best to give you an understanding of what it is and how it works. So what is the charter? Under state law, a charter is a written instrument which establishes and defines the government structure under which a city or town operates. The charter creates local offices, it distributes powers and responsibilities, and it establishes and defines procedures to be followed by the town. The charter is essentially a local constitution that sets forth the legal framework of town government. It takes precedence over town ordinances if there is a conflict. The charter provisions are not allowed to be inconsistent with the Massachusetts Constitution or with laws enacted by the state legislature. So home rule. So the Home Rule Amendment, which is Article 89 of the amendments to the Massachusetts Constitution, was enacted in 1966, and it granted cities and towns the right of self-government in local matters. The Home Rule Amendment shared the powers of the state with cities and towns in certain areas, and that includes granting the ability for cities and towns to form a charter commission to adopt a new charter, entirely revise an existing charter, or amend selected charter provisions. The state then enacted Chapter 43B, which is the Home Rule Procedures Act, which sets forth the process for how a city or town may exercise its home rule powers. So the process to adopt or amend a charter. So again, that's set forth in Chapter 43B. So to adopt a charter, you do it either through a charter commission or through a special act of the legislature. And again, Chapter 43B sets out the exact process for doing all of that. To amend an existing charter, there are 3 ways to do it. You can do it through a charter commission, you can do it through a special act, or you can do it through a 2/3 vote of the city council after a public hearing and then final action within 6 months. The proposal then goes to the Attorney General, who reviews it to make sure it's not inconsistent with state law. And once the Attorney General determines that, it goes to the voters. So certain proposed changes must be done through a charter commission and cannot be done that way. The Barnstable Charter provides basically just that it may be replaced, revised, or amended in accordance with the Home Rule Amendment and Chapter 43B. So the Barnstable Charter is known as the Barnstable Home Rule Charter. The voters approved it in 1989, and a new town council was sworn in 1990. So the structure of government. Under our charter, the name of the town is the town of Barnstable, but we have a city form of government. Cities are typically, they're not defined in the law, but they're typically municipalities with a town council or city council or a board of aldermen as their elected legislative bodies, and either an elected or appointed mayor or manager. Barnstable obviously has a council manager form of government. The elected town council is the legislative body for the town. It is responsible for adopting ordinances, which are the laws of the town, approving budgets, and setting policy. Under the charter, all legislative powers of the town shall be exercised by a town council. And the charter further provides that except as otherwise provided by law or by the charter, all powers of the town shall be vested in the town council. The appointed town manager, so the council is the legislative body, the appointed town manager is the chief executive officer. He manages and oversees the day-to-day operations of the town. Under the charter, the administration of all town fiscal, business, and municipal affairs shall be vested in the executive branch headed by the town manager. All town staff report to the town manager. The town manager reports to you, the town council. So I'm now going to just kind of walk through some of the key charter provisions. I'm not going to go through, obviously, everything that's in there. There's a provision, I think I skipped a page, sorry. So the boards, commissions, and committees of the town are generally appointed by the town council. The charter defines what a quorum is for the council. It's 9. And I think the town council rules have something that's a little misleading, but it is 9 the charter controls. Votes are adopted by a majority of those present and voting unless otherwise provided by law or the charter. An example of that is, and we did that tonight, an affirmative vote, well, for appropriations, an affirmative vote of a majority of the full council is required. So you need 7 votes to approve an appropriation, regardless of how many councilors are present and voting. Under state law, another example, you need a 2/3 vote for a loan authorization. So that's why you see when on the agenda, different items have different required votes. Under the charter, it says the town council shall adopt written rules for its proceedings. Those are the town council rules that you've all received. Those rules, I think, are in need of cleanup and update, and that's something I know we've talked a little bit about, and happy to assist as you move forward with that. Again, if the rules conflict with the charter prevails. Rules can be suspended, and you can take a vote to suspend the rule. Charter provisions cannot be suspended. They are what they are. The charter provides for roll call votes for certain items, for ordinances, appropriation orders, and loan authorizations. It also provides that regular meetings must include a period for public comment. That's not true for special meetings. It is true for regular meetings. The charter also defines what a measure is. A measure is any matter coming before the town council that is inherently legislative in nature, including but not limited to ordinances, charter amendments, appropriations, loan orders, lease approvals, contract approvals, and eminent domain authorizations. It's a little confusing that it says contract approvals because most contracts are actually under the town manager's authority to approve. And so what we have done is we look at if there is a law that requires town council approval, and there are a number of items that require by law that the town council approve that contract, then we view that as a measure. A measure does not include any matter that is executive, administrative, or ministerial, or quasi-judicial, including but not limited to appointments, resolutions, proclamations, tax classification votes, and petitions to the general court. I honestly don't know why petitions to the general court are not considered legislative, but under our charter, they're not. So they're not considered measures. Measures require 2 reads, and they're generally effective 30 days after adoption. Other provisions, other requirements in the charter, ordinances, appropriations, and loan authorizations are required to be published in a local newspaper at least 10 days before passage. And the way we do it on the agenda is we typically use the term orders for measures, those are the 2 reads, and resolves for non-measures, which are 1 read. There's also something in the charter called a charter objection, and that can be used to postpone a vote on a measure until the next regular or special meeting of the council. And the charter explains how that works and when you can actually use that. You can only use that once per agenda item. I have actually not seen that used since I've been here, but it's there. The charter also spells out the town manager's responsibilities. It's a long list. I'm including a number of them here. We don't have to necessarily go through all of them, but he appoints and supervises all town staff, except for employees of the school department, the airport commission, and persons serving under elected officials. Certain of his appointments require town council approval. He coordinates the activities of town departments or agencies. The manager is responsible for the rental use, maintenance, and repair of all town facilities, again, with a carve-out for the school committee and the airport commission. He is responsible for the purchase of all supplies, materials, and equipment, and approves all contract awards. So that's where most of the authority for contracts falls within the town manager. He maintains an inventory of all town property and administers personnel policies and regulations and collective bargaining agreements, again, except for school department agreements. Negotiates collective bargaining agreements with a carve-out for the school department and the airport commission. And if those contracts, and they typically do, require appropriations, those appropriations must be approved by the council. The manager prepares and submits an annual operating budget, capital improvement program, and a long-term financial forecast. There's other items, but I'm skipping over them. And the organization of town agencies. Our agencies are set forth in an administrative code. The administrative code is considered an appendix to, but not part of the ordinances of the town. So those are typically amended through 2 reads pursuant to the town council rules, but they're not treated as ordinances. The charter talks about the elected town offices, the school committee, the town clerk, and the housing authority. It contains an entire section on citizens' relief mechanisms. Just a couple of examples are individual and group petitions and open meeting of the voters. We recently had one on the wind items that falls under the citizens' relief mechanisms. And then there is an entire section on financial procedures, which I know Director Milne is going to talk to you all about. So I don't know if there are any questions that you'd like me to answer. I'd be happy to.
Thank you. That was a good summary, considering it's a much bigger document than that. Questions? I think it's very good for us, so many new counselors here, and people always need review on really our Constitution and Charter, what's going on, so it was really nice to have it here. Never hurts to hear it and know it again. No questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have review of fiscal policy financial procedures by Director Mark Milne. Again, we're coming into budget season, so this is good education. Thank you.
This is great timing, and thank you for this opportunity to review this with you. We'll start with a review of the major fiscal policies that we deal with on a regular basis. And those are listed here, starting with the tax levy growth. We have under Proposition 2.5, we're governed by Proposition 2.5 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have traditionally increased the tax levy by the limitations under Proposition 2.5, but the fiscal policy at some time could include a debt exclusion request to override that. For example, we have been talking with the past council about the possibility of having to do something like that to fund the CWMP, and so that's the tax levy growth policy matter that I'm talking about here. Tax levy allocation policy, you just dealt with that at your December 21st meeting. How are we going to allocate the tax levy between classes and within classes? Allocation of general fund resources, capital versus operations. This kind of manifests itself in the budget that we bring forward to you every single year. For example, at fiscal year 24, if you recall, we made a proposal to increase the funding to the capital program side of the budget by an additional $2 million that we had available, and that was presented to the council in the form of the capital and operating budgets that were brought forward. A subset of that is the allocation of general fund operating resources between the school and municipal operations. What is that going to look like every single year? We have, on an annual basis under our charter, which I'll get into next, is we have a requirement to adopt the policy. The town manager and a school superintendent every year have to get together and talk about that revenue sharing agreement. And that is reviewed by the town council. It doesn't require town council approval, but we provide it under the charter. We have to allow you to review that. And we do that every year, usually in October at a joint meeting with the school committee and the town council. Modification of service levels, that's a fiscal policy. Are we going to enhance certain services? Are we going to reduce certain services? Are we going to eliminate certain services? Are we going to add a new service? Fiscal policy to think about. Enterprise fund subsidies. Most of our enterprise funds are self-supporting with the exception of the Highness Youth and Community Center. That's a fiscal policy. To what level are we going to subsidize certain enterprise fund operations? Any creation of a new revenue source. We've done this. A good example of this would be the meals tax. When the state legislature approved communities the option to adopt a local meals tax, our town council at the time approved to do so. In relation to that, the dedication of specific revenue sources, those meals taxes were dedicated towards funding the sewer expansion program or the comprehensive wastewater management program. The council has taken action on several occasions to dedicate certain revenue streams for specific purposes. Short-term rental taxes were also a source that was dedicated for certain purposes. And finally, property tax exemptions. You see these, you've seen these on a kind of a routine basis: ties, tax increment exemptions, TIFs, tax increment financing. We don't have a lot, but there's our few, and they have to come before the town council for your approval. And we had talked at our last meeting about perhaps filing for some special legislation to enhance exemptions for certain types of properties, like rental properties that are offered to year-round tenants. So those are some examples of the fiscal policy considerations that we routinely deal with. We had all of these policies reviewed by our Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee a few years ago, and they issued a report in July of 2020, I believe, on the fiscal policies that we're going to use for fiscal year 22's budget development. And that report's available on the town's website under CFAC. Moving into those financial procedures that Attorney Noble talked about that are encompassed in the charter, this is the list. There's that annual budget policy that that the town manager and the school superintendent have to come to an agreement on as far as the sharing of revenue. There's a requirement to submit a budget and include in that budget the significant changes. The town manager has to have a message to go along with that budget. And it lays out the form that budget needs to be presented in. We have to present the budget to you in a programmatic form. So if you look at the budget document for every department, it's listed in a programmatic form, rolled up to a division level, rolled up to a department level. Action on the budget. You're required by the charter to have public hearings on that budget, and you have to advertise those public hearings within a certain number of days before the public hearings. And it talks about how to adopt the budget. There's a section that addresses supplementary budget and appropriations and how the procedures that you have to follow to do those. And typically it's similar to the annual operating budget, a couple of reads, advertising requirements. There's a section that talks about the capital improvement plan. What form does that have to be in? And what contents does it include? And also it says in there that the town manager will create a committee to assist in the development of that capital improvement plan. That committee currently is what we call the Capital Improvement Plan Task Force, which is made up predominantly of department heads. There are the long-term financial forecast that Attorney Noble mentioned. There's an annual requirement to issue a 5-year long-term financial forecast. It used to be 10. The last charter change that we adopted a few years ago reduced that to 5. And then there, of course, is an annual audit requirement. We have to have our financial statements audited by an independent outside auditor every single year. We're currently under the process of having that done, and that report will be done this month and available for your review. And finally, there are financial management standards that we must follow, and those are adopted or included in the administrative code under section 241-51 of our administrative code. So the budget cycle, we have 4 main components included in the budget cycle. It really starts off with the development of the town council strategic plan. That provides us some direction as to what your priorities are going into a budget development season. That's usually updated by the council every 2 years. And it could be more frequently. It all depends on how often the council wants to decide to update their strategic plan. The second major part of the budget cycle is the annual budget policy development under the charter, which is that agreement between the town council and the school superintendent. And that, again, is presented to the joint meeting of the town council and the school committee, usually in the October timeframe. The other major component of the budget cycle is that capital improvement plan development, again, a charter requirement, and the town manager is assisted by that CIP task force when he brings forward his proposed capital budget. And then finally, the operating budget document. This is required by state law. Every city and town in Massachusetts has to prepare an annual operating budget for the legislative body's approval. And It's important to note that we have limited powers, you have limited powers over the school department budget. The responsibility of developing and proposing a school department budget is the superintendent of every school district and a school committee. Your responsibility is to whether or not to approve the funding that they request. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. Here's the main components of our budget calendar with some time frames that these events take place. So August and September is when we're developing that revenue sharing agreement between the town manager and the school superintendent, which then gets presented at that October meeting. Then in September, we really start the development of the 5-year capital plan by issuing instructions, and we submit that to the town council. We finish that around February, and we submit it to the town council in March. During that same time period, the school department is issuing their budget instructions and developing their operating budgets from the month of September to February. We come to March, and the school committee is holding public hearings on the school's proposed operating budget, and they typically approve that at their first meeting in April, and then they submit that approved budget to the town manager so that he may include that in his proposed budget for the entire town. During September and April, the development of the municipal budget is also taking place, and once we get that school committee approved budget, we put it into the town's overall proposed budget, and the town manager submits that to the council in early May. Then back in April, we begin those public hearings on the capital budget. The capital budget always comes before the operating budget, and that's in accordance with our charter. So we conduct those public hearings on the capital budget in the month of April, and then come June, after the town manager submits his proposed operating budget at the end of May, or at the beginning of May, we conduct public hearings on the operating budget, including the school department's proposed budget. I'm not going to go over this slide, but I just wanted to point this out. You all have a copy of this, I believe, and it's on the website, but I wanted to point out these are the important tasks and when they're the dates that they're supposed to take place that we follow every single year. And there is a link here to the town's website, an embedded link on this presentation that you could access that calendar on the town's website if you need another copy of it. Here are some important deadlines associated with our annual budget. State law requires the operating budget to be submitted to you by the town manager within 170 days of your reorganization. Your reorganization took place on December 21st when you voted in town council president and vice president. That's your reorganization. That starts the clock kicking on 170 days. So that gives us until June 21st to submit a budget to you. We're not going to do that, no. I promise you. We'll get it to you earlier than that. We plan to submit it to you the May 8th because you need time to act on it. The charter provides you 45 days. No matter when it's submitted, you have 45 days to act on that. Otherwise, it becomes the budget if you fail to act. So there really is a small window there. 45 days is not a lot of time, but we give it to you 30 days in advance of, we try to give it to you 30 days in advance of your public hearings, but then you have a real quick time in your 2 public hearings in June to approve the budget. The capital program must be acted upon by May 31st in accordance with the charter. So that's why we do the capital public hearings first. So we plan on giving you the public, or the capital program in early April, and then you'll begin your public hearings on that in April 25th and May 2nd, in accordance with our calendar. So what's the internal capital budget development process that we use? So the town manager typically issues those budget instructions to develop the capital side of the budget to department heads in September, and that includes the school department. Department heads will direct key staff to assist them in developing what those capital submissions would look like, and oftentimes there's a coordination between departments to develop those submissions. Our Public Works Department predominantly manages the implementation of a lot of our capital projects. So they'll work with Marine and Environmental Affairs, they'll work with Planning and Development, they'll work on even in the school department on some projects, but a majority of their responsibility for creating and submitting these submissions falls on the Public Works Department, because they manage our infrastructure, most of it anyways. We use a two-step evaluation process then to rank those submissions. The CIP task force meets in an all-day workshop, and every department presents their highest priority projects. We have well over 100 project submissions over the 5-year period, but we're really focusing on the projects departments are looking for funding in the ensuing fiscal year. And there are a lot, so we're limited as to the ones that we can review. So we rank those the first time around based as to whether or not the project is considered imperative. Is there a regulatory requirement, for example, that's going to make us do this? Is there an immediate public health and safety matter that's going to require us to do this? So imperative is one of the criteria we rank at the highest. Then it falls to essential. Then the third category is important, and the last category is desirable, or these are the projects that would be nice to do. So we go through that process and we rank them using those 4 categories. The second process that we use is to have the task force members use this 10 criteria that are closely aligned with the town council strategic plan and evaluate every one of those projects against those 10 criteria. They hate me when I send the request out for them to give me the scores on those. And Councilor Tams, you may be familiar with what that looked like in the past, but it's a long, difficult process if it's your first time around, but after you do it once, you kind of know how it works. And because there's a lot of reading involved, and it takes a lot of time to understand and score those things. But it's a very useful tool for the town manager when he's determining which are the most important projects to bring forward for funding. And then, of course, he submits that proposed capital budget and 5-year capital plan, and we provide a copy of that to CFAC for their review, because they're going to produce a report on that plan in accordance with their charge, and I'll talk about that in a minute. As far as the internal operating budget development procedures, we start off every year with finance preparing revenue projections, fixed cost projections, and salary projections for all departments, including the school department. The superintendent issues budget instructions for their department heads, and the town manager provides budget instructions for the other department heads. We utilize a combination of program-based budgeting techniques and incremental budgeting to prepare the budget. Program-based being what's required under the charter. We have to break down every department's budget to a program level. So we present it to you in that format. Incremental budgeting is every department receives the base funding that they got from the previous year. We fund level service every year, unless we're directed not to do level service for somebody. And if they want to increase the budget beyond that, then they have to prepare what's called a decision package. And we'll rank those decision packages in order of priority and importance to determine which ones we can fund and which ones we cannot, based on our revenue limitations. So the superintendent and town manager then meet with the department heads to review all of those decision packages that are submitted. The superintendent then submits the proposed budget to the school committee back in March, as I talked about. They hold their public hearings. School committee adopts that operating budget, and they submit it to the town manager. The town manager then includes that adopted budget in his proposed budget that goes to the council, and that's planned on again in May. So what's the role of the Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee in all of this? Well, the administrative code under section 241.18 lays out their responsibility. Number one, they provide financial advice to the town council on the operating budget. Secondly, they provide financial advice to the town council and the town manager on matters of long-range financial planning. And third, they're responsible for advising the town manager on the annual preparation of the town's capital improvement plan. They're not responsible for the development of the budget and submitting a proposed capital or operating budget to the council. They do submit a report to the town council and to the town manager every year on both the operating budget and the capital plan. That's part of their charge. So all these documents are presented to the Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee for their review, and they write a report on both budgets. Their interaction in the whole budget development process includes these steps. They receive a copy of those revenue projections and fixed cost projections that we prepare early on in the budget preparation process. They're updated on a regular basis by us as to any new financial information that comes in that may affect our resources. They receive a copy of all the capital submissions that departments make. And they attend, more recently, in the past 4 years now, we've had members of CFAC attend that all-day workshop of the CIP task force to familiarize them with the process that we use, because we wanted to get their feedback as to whether or not they think this is a good process that we're using. And they'll meet with department heads to review those capital project submissions and operating budget submissions. They typically don't have enough time, because they meet twice a month, to meet with every single department, so we really focus on schools, police, DPW, airport, our larger operations, where most of our resources, 85% of our resources in the general fund, are directed to schools, DPW, and police. So we're really focusing on those, and CFAC is focusing on those. They're updated on a regular basis on other matters of a financial nature. How are we going to fund the comprehensive wastewater management plan? I've provided them several projections on that and gotten their feedback on that. And they've actually studied that issue and provided the town council a report on that. That was one of the things that the town council asked CFAC to do. They've also reviewed the tax levy shifting options, although they don't have our responsibility to provide you a recommendation on those. You did hear a member of CFAC provide you a recommendation, but he was speaking for himself, not on behalf of the committee, because it's not their responsibility. All their meetings are held in the open format via Zoom. They're open meetings to the public via Zoom. They choose to meet via Zoom. It works well for many of them. They travel, they're retired, and it gives them an opportunity to all participate more. If we held them in person, I'm not quite sure we'd get a quorum for many of their meetings. But we have an excellent group of people sitting on that Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. And we've had some great people in the past as well. So the budget documents that we produce include a 5-year capital plan that includes the funding being proposed for the ensuing year. The 5-year plan really lays out what we've identified as needs. But we only ask for 1 year of funding at a time. The projects that you see in years 2 through 5 aren't necessarily going to get funded in those years due to resource limitations. But we are required to bring you a proposed budget for the ensuing year. The operating budget that comes before you includes the general fund and the 9 enterprise funds that we operate. That's what's required by state law. Only enterprise funds and the general fund need to be appropriated on an annual basis, so your operating budget will include appropriations for those operations every year. We follow the GFOA's best practices in developing these budgets. We've received their award for 21 consecutive years. They have over 100 criteria that you must meet in order to qualify for their award, with many of them being mandatory. And they gauge each awards submission as to whether or not they meet those criteria in 4 major categories. Is it a good policy document? Does it demonstrate a good financial plan? Is it a good operations guide for the community? And is it a good communications device? And also, the award reflects the commitment of our governing body and our staff to meet those highest best principles for governmental budgeting. Finally, the operating budget presentation and appropriations. The charter requires the operating budget to be presented in the terms of work programs for all agencies. That's why we present it in that programmatic format. State law requires us, because we're a city form of government, as Attorney Noble mentioned, Each department must be classified and designated in that budget document to show separately the amounts being recommended for operating expenses, salaries and wages, and operating capital. Our administrative procedure, however, for the town council requires you to vote for each department amount, bottom line. If we had you vote for every single line item and in program, your budget hearings would go forever. And there would be a lot of votes. The charter, again, requires 45 days for you to act on the submission. The charter also requires that the council may delete or decrease any program or amounts with the exception of debt service. You can't eliminate appropriation to pay our loans. We have to pay those first and foremost. So, and state law says that the council cannot place any restrictions on school appropriations, and you cannot allocate school appropriations among their accounts. They ask for a budget, you vote their appropriation up or down. If you decide not to fund what they're asking for, you can appropriate a lesser amount, but you can't say, take it from this department or take it from that area. The school superintendent and the school committee have the authority by law to make that decision, but you could always reduce their budget from what they ask for. So that completes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the right. Councilor Lutke.
Thank you. That was a fantastic presentation, Director Milne. I have a couple questions. The annual audit, what's entailed? Who does that audit? Is that done internally, or is it an outside agency that comes in and does something?
We're required by an outside independent auditor to conduct that audit. We prepare the financial statements, we do all the work in giving them what they need to audit, and then they go through that and they audit. Again, their outside agency has to be required because of bond covenants, because of state law. We have to be audited on an annual basis.
And what are they looking at? I guess my question is, do we ever audit at the department level?
That would be, no, not for we're only auditing the financial statements, and they're attesting as to whether or not those financial statements present fairly and accurately the financial condition of the town.
Okay.
And are they complete, accurate financial statements?
Have we ever audited at the department level?
We have done a number of internal audits where we have gone out and hired an outside company to come in and look at certain operations to try to identify particular areas where we could conduct cost savings or maybe more collaboration between other departments, for example. We did the information technology operations several years ago. I think we might have done assessing back when we had a lot of similar challenges that we had today with rising property values and whether or not the systems that we had in place were being followed properly. So yes, we have.
Okay. Yeah. I just wonder if we'd be able to dust that off for some of the heavy hitters you talked about. I'm specifically thinking about the DPW and the police. Because I know at a certain point, the DPW was always our number 2 after the schools, and that's been flipped with the police. And I just find that interesting with the span of our municipality and the responsibilities of the DPW. It would be, I think, worthy to look at specifically with the comprehensive wastewater management program coming online. The work with the cables. I know when Mr. Steen presented to the local comprehensive planning committee, he talked about that it's really been a lot of work to coordinate with that. It just seems like it might be an opportune time with the override, perhaps, to really take a closer look at the department level of those 2 town departments and just get ourselves on a really good footing, a solid footing. That we are spending. And kind of with that, it was like you said we could delete or decrease, we could never increase. I'm just curious about what the rationale there. We couldn't say that, this just isn't making sense to us. Could we maybe Why is that? Why can we only delete or decrease?
Thank you for bringing that up. You actually can increase in appropriation for any department, but you have to have the town manager's recommendation as well to do so. So you
Okay.
do have the authority to increase. But if we do that, then we have to identify the funding source as well, which is why it requires the town manager's recommendation to do it. Because you either have to take it from another department, or you've got to pull it out of your reserves. You have to make that decision to go along with that increase request.
Yeah. And you've been here a while. When did the police surpass the DPW?
Comment on that. They never have.
They never
They never
have?
have. When you look at the Public Works Department as a whole, between
Okay.
their water supply operations, their wastewater operations, their solid waste transfer station operations, and their general fund operations, they've always been number 2 when you look at it holistically.
Okay, I guess
across
I've
the
been
board.
looking across, and I kind of see the police as, but I guess I'm not looking at the totality of it. So that's a great point. Thank you. And then decision packages. How many department heads, does every department head put in a decision package every year?
Usually every year, and many of them include requests for additional staffing. A lot of times, they'll include things for situations like we heard earlier this evening. We're going to a body cam program in our police department.
Right.
That requires an annual funding commitment. That's new. And so that usually gets submitted to us in a form of a decision package, because we have to rank those, and that's one of them that's going to come right off the top. We're funding that because we have to. It's a program in place. It's been negotiated, and it's, we got to do it at this point.
Yeah.
And it's a good program.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No, excellent. Oh, Councilor Levesque.
Just thank you for the presentation, and also I think that it should be recognized of your utilization as our finance director of our CFAC committee, and the way you utilize that is, and as I've seen, other committees. I'm not faulting other directors or anything like that, but the way you utilize their committee, empower them, educate them, and obviously very much thank the people who serve on that CFAC committee. And again, kudos to you for taking the opportunity to use our residents and educate them and using their superpowers to benefit our town. So that's a great, I think that's the model utilization of a committee partnership with a director in the town of Barnstable, and I just want to recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, because on behalf of the CFAC members, you've got a great dedicated group of people right now, and they're my sounding board, really. I have an idea, I want to bounce it off of them. I had them look at that funding plan that I did for CWMP, and, they were very helpful.
But that's to your recognition of what makes you great, so thank you.
Yep, using the talent in the room. There's something to be said for that. There's plenty of talent in town, so good for you. And congratulations on the 21 years
Thank you.
of recognition. That's terrific for that. All right, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll have questions in the future as we grind through it. And I know you'll be available. All right, I don't want to extend the meeting any longer. I just wanted to give you a couple announcements of what's going on in the wheelhouse and some housekeeping here, notes from the president. So, first on the list, unless I hear an objection, at the request of several councilors, Councilor Mendez, I am moving the start time for the next few meetings to 6 p.m. And I will be bringing a vote before the council to formalize this change for a more extended period beginning in March. So this is something that's basically governed by our town charter. The rules don't say, the code, I'm sorry, town code. And therefore, there are going to be votes going forward to do that, but we have a hand up over here. Are you objecting?
I just have a concern on the first meeting in February that I have a work commitment that would make it difficult for me to do the 6 o'clock. Otherwise, I'm fine going forward with that.
Yeah, I think the way this would end up going is that we'd have a first read coming up, and then a second read, and then we'd start like in March. But I would like to try for the January 18th meeting, just to see how that goes, and then we'll do it more permanently going forward, because it's going to have to be treated just like an ordinance would be, with the first reading, second reading, and then we'll identify the period for that and go before that. Okay? Great. I'm working to have the agendas, I'm working with staff to have the agendas available on the Friday preceding our meetings, rather than the 2 days preceding, to give us all time to better prepare for that. I'm working to create, when we went to Fort Devens for that Saturday training, we noticed that all the municipalities with our form of government, which was everybody in the room, had a tremendous basis for town council subcommittees. This isn't the standing committees we have, but town council subcommittees. So I'm working to create some of those. They will all be posted meetings, open to the public. Most of the committees will no doubt consist of counselors. The public would be welcome to attend and to participate, but no votes. So that's kind of how, because we're doing a lot of housekeeping in this. So some critical areas of concern or areas that need attention, town council rules, as we heard today, haven't been looked at for a few years, and possible charter review, regulatory review and enforcement, so that relates to zoning in the town. There's some issues that have apparently risen in a rather quick manner that indicate that there's some attention required there. Our standing committees, there probably should be a review of all the committees we have liaisons to make sure that, audit them and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing in their purpose, and that they're comprised of people who know that. I know that when I asked some people if they were okay with their liaison assignments, several people said, I don't want to do this anymore. And one person said, no, I can't do this because this committee has no idea what they're doing. So it raised a flag to me and said, wow, there's some attention that needs to be paid here. So hopefully we'll have a committee self-audit ourselves here. Maybe a communications committee. This has been suggested from other people. So it's a work in progress. My target is by the end of March to have them formulated and purposed and with defined goals and objectives. And most of the committees, they'll have a set task. So they'll begin, and when they're done with their task, they'll end, and then they'll be sunsetted. So there's not necessarily something that's going to grind away forever, okay? I'm also talking to staff to create the use of consent agendas. So this would be to group routine items and resolutions under one umbrella so that we could just vote them with one vote. So the body would be consenting that no discussion is required for any of those issues that are under the umbrella. And if it's found that a council wishes an item to have discussion or warrant discussion, then that item would be pulled from the consent agenda and put back on the regular agenda. So that's something new for us. I know it's been tried in the past. I don't recall noticing that in the agendas, but we're going to see if we can work toward that and see if that's something that works for us or not. And if it doesn't, so be it. We gave it a try, and if it does, good for us. Sarah made a request just before this meeting that maybe we come a little early before the next meeting. She wants to get group photo and or individual shots, I think, to update the website so people know who we are, et cetera. And that's all I have. Is there anything else to come before this august body? Our next meeting is January 18th. Can we try for 6 o'clock? Everybody's good? I heard a loud yes over here, so great. All right. Do we need to vote to adjourn? We do. I need
To adjourn.
There's a second. Second over here. All in favor? Thank you.